Hi, friends. Welcome back to Escaping Reality, the podcast where three friends chit chat about things to escape the reality. And wow, somehow reality is maybe worse than when we started this podcast, but
Insane.
insane. We started during COVID for context. So today we're going to talk about Survivor Season 48, Episode 5, A Masterclass in Deception, which is a quote from Kyle. But before we jump into that, just a reminder, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube now. If you would like to watch our videos, Anna is doing like a really beautiful little recap with some screen grabs, etc. It's absolutely stunning. So if you don't want to just listen to us in your ears, you can also watch us on YouTube. Yeah, that would be lovely. So give us a follow, give us a like, give us some 5 stars, smash that follow button, as they say, and let's get into chit-chatting about this episode because it was a good one. Before we talk about initial thoughts, I'm just going to quickly remind you who is left in the game prior to this episode. So we're on episode 5. We've lost 4 friends. So left on original Vula, which is they've all moved around now, but we have Cedric, Mary, and Say. Original Loggy, we have left Bianca, Eva, Joe, Shaheen, and Star. And original Siva, we have Charity, Mitch, Kyle, David, Chrissy, and Camilla. So that's who we're playing with before the end of this episode. And for initial thoughts, I'm going to start with our girl, Stacy. What did you think, Stace?
I thought this was a good episode. The day it came out, I didn't feel great. So I missed some of the beginning because I was taking a nap, but I hopped back in, texted Anna to make sure she was watching. And I think Aggie, I think you're at a show. So, but yeah, overall, I thought it was a good episode. And then I rewatched, and I do think when I was in a better mood, I enjoyed it more. So overall, I mean, we were all waiting to see what made Jeff cry because he hasn't really shown many tears over the years. So obviously, we'll talk about that event, I guess you could say. But in general, I thought it was good. We got a reward challenge. Always love to see those. Seemed like a pretty good reward. And yeah, I think the challenges were interesting. I do have a question I want to ask when we get to the immunity challenge, but I'll wait. So overall, I thought it was a good episode. I was sad to see Bianca go because I had told Anna that if she could survive this vote, I felt like she could kind of have like a Kenzie situation and kind of make like a comeback. But so I was sad to see her go, but overall, good episode and ready to get into it.
Anna, what did you think?
I mean, obviously it was a great episode, and I really don't want to be too harsh on it because of all the beautiful things that we saw. It was a rough week for Team Anna. Can't even lie. That was tough. I did not see that coming. I don't appreciate that the episode title has nothing to do with like anything we saw. You know what I mean? And for how much they've been hailing this episode is like so monumental for representation and like so impactful to the audience, which it was. I just, we should have named it accordingly. I'm being very nitpicky. I was in a foul mood also when I watched the episode, so I was being very cynical, like, but I can see the beauty of it all. I really can. Was it a little bit extremely overhyped? Yeah. But Survivor loves hyperbole. Like Jeff Probst loves to just use extreme language for everything. And it was a really, really great episode. I have some issues with the pacing of things and the way that like the overall episode was edited. But again, I'm being like extraordinarily nitpicky and probably a little too cynical, but trust when I say I do see the beauty in this episode. I thought it was great. A lot of great conversations happening because of it, which is always wonderful to see, especially in the Survivor community who can be very mean, nasty, and jaded. But apparently I'm one of them. But I'm going to hold my tongue a little bit this episode because I don't want my critiques, which I do feel are valid in my own like personal inner thoughts. I don't want that to eclipse the fact that like this was a really great episode and we shared a lot of beautiful moments.
We did share a lot of beautiful moments, Anna. I think we'll all have a lot to say about some of the like bigger things that came up in this episode that weren't just who won the challenge, who is having this masterclass in deception, etc. I don't disagree with you, Anna. I think this quote would have been a better name for last week's episode, but it would have been too obvious because if they called it a masterclass in deception, then we would know Camilla and Kyle would have been successful. So we were kind of like I kind of get it, but it's like that is so not what this episode is about in general. But that's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine.
It's again, it's a true nitpick.
It's a true nitpick, but it's kind of like I'm validating your point. Nitpick or
Mhm.
not, I'm validating your point. I think I said it last week. I don't know if it's just this group of people. I don't know if it was what they did in casting for 47 and 48, but like the first 5 episodes of this season and all of last season, I just like genuinely like almost everyone on the season
Yeah.
for different reasons. Not necessarily always as a game player, but this is the first time this season or for the first, like these last 2 seasons is the first time in a while where I've enjoyed watching people from a gameplay perspective, but also enjoyed learning about them as people. And it didn't feel shoved down my throat in terms of like why I should care about this person, but it also felt like they are also trying to play the game, which in previous seasons it's always like the first part of New Era, it was so much about like let's look at all these cool new people. And I'm not saying that they weren't cool new people, but it was like, but why should I care about them in within the context of Survivor? And so it's been very fun to sort of just watch my affection for all of them grow. And like this is the first time in a while where I've been like outside of season 47 where I'm like, you know what? Like, I actually think a lot of people have a shot at the end. I think the show itself has hit a really good stride again. It took us 4 years and 8 seasons maybe to feel good about it, but I don't know if they've been doing some tweaks to how they're casting or like the types of questions they're asking or what they're sort of getting at because like as we'll see, there's some real connections that we see between people, but it does have effect on the actual game and how they're playing together. And maybe that's just luck. Maybe that's like how the tribe swaps came out. Maybe it's how the sort of things came out. But I do think there's something to be said for just like really compelling, interesting people being put on television as well. So I don't know. I'm just feeling very cautiously optimistic about 48 because like I said, after 47, I was like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this again in the new era. Like, it feels like it was just a one-off thing, but I don't know what's going on potentially like behind the scenes or how they're making those decisions. But it really is like, I don't know. I'm just very much enjoying this season. That's not really like initial thoughts on this episode, but it was just another episode where I was like, wow, this show is great. And I just love it. I think that was my takeaway. And I was emotionally invested. I was excited to see what happened. And I cried, which don't do anymore watching Survivor. I don't know if that's just like very rarely do I cry or like get as emotional as I used to. And I was like, hey, like I actually maybe this show is back a little bit. I said it last week, like cautiously, maybe Survivor's back and like maybe it's in a good sort of groove. So we'll see. But let's get into the actual episode. So first, we'd have like a very short, like post-tribal sort of chit-chat type thing because as Stacey, I think you said, there's a reward challenge and an immunity challenge, and they're separate for the first time in the tribal part of the game. And so they actually had a lot of things to do this episode, which trust, I'm not sad about that. I love a snappy episode. But right when they get back, we have Vula coming back from tribal council where they voted out Thomas. So this is new Vula. So we have Kyle and Camilla, Joe and Shaheen left. And Kyle and Camilla still playing it very chill. They're very pleased they pulled off this big move, but they're also just kind of like, I'm going to keep it a secret. We're going to keep our friendship a secret still. They're playing it off very calmly. Joe and Shaheen are basically like, we're pretty sad that we lost Thomas because he is a good guy. We really like him. But the general vibe seems to be, we're ready to put this behind us. We have to win a challenge. Like, let's just work together and not have to go back to tribal council because I don't want to do that again. Any thoughts on this before we get into the reward challenge?
Other than that, I love them. No.
Other than you love them? No. No for Stacey. Okay, I didn't feel super
Oh, I feel like
feel
more happens later, and I'd rather talk about the stuff that happens later.
Yeah, exactly. Like it builds till later. So it's not like this is the most important interaction between them. But the idea being they understand the stakes and they're like, we just gotta win a challenge. Like we gotta get a dub. So speaking of challenges, let's go to the reward challenge. Bianca is very shocked that Thomas is gone, so we get a little bit of that. And then Jeff's like, okay, we need 2 sit-outs because there's an elimination challenge later on in this episode. Whoever sits out this challenge has to participate in the next challenge. And Say basically is like, I deserve a break. So Say sits out for Siva and Charity sits out for Loggy, which we see the payoff for this later, but if you have thoughts about it in a second, feel free to share. Jeff is like, this is just a reward challenge. It's not an immunity challenge. And the first team to win is going to be able to get pastries at the sanctuary, which I thought was a little weird. I don't know, it felt weird that we sent a whole tribe. I'm sure we have, but something about it felt off. So he was like, your tribe will go to the sanctuary. You can eat pastries. The second tribe to win, or to finish, I should say, they get a smaller selection of those pastries back at camp. How they're going to do this, they have to throw sandbags at this little whirligig thing and it like falls down and then they drop some balls. Those balls they have to like bounce pass into a net basket and then roll them and land them in three targets. We see Siva really struggle. They have a hard time. And then we see Lagi come in first. New Vula comes in second. So they're feeling a little bit of success. And gosh, there's so much happens at all these interactions at these challenges. Mary is very proud of Lagi, says that and says like, no, I am going to call you out on that. And she's like, I think you could win with more tactfulness. And Charity, she's like mad at Say for being a sore loser. So there's some tension and some feelings around how the win comes about. So any thoughts on this reward challenge, everyone's feelings, RE the challenge and sitting out? What are we feeling?
Say, talking about tact, ma'am, you have been the most like brash person here. Like you cannot say that. And then also even her sitting out because she's tired. I just feel like she thinks she can do no wrong, but then everyone else can do wrong. And it's like you got to be careful because you're rubbing Chrissy the wrong way, Chastity, even Mary, who you
You mean
vouched.
Charity?
Oh, Charity. Okay,
What'd you call her? Chastity?
Yeah.
Drop your buffs
Same
has like
thing.
jokingly been calling her like chastity, but I thought it was chastity, but it's Charity. Oh my god. Okay.
She's on your team, Stacey.
She's a stranger, okay?
I mean, I also called Thomas Lucas. It's just part of the now that I know her name is Charity.
We're back.
She's just being rubbed the wrong way as well, I think.
Yeah.
But even Mitch too was like, girl, stop talking. Like, that was my favorite part. It was like, shut up.
Yeah, Mitch is an icon and a legend.
I'm like, say you're rubbing your team wrong and your opponent's wrong. Please reel it in. Like,
Also, like, what are you doing fighting with Mary when you're not on the same team anymore?
that's what I was just like, oh no. And poor Cedric was probably like, I should have kept Justin. What am I doing? So those are my thoughts on that. And then yeah, I think you're right though. I don't think the whole tribe usually goes to the sanctuary. At least not
Am-
like this early.
Am I
don't know.
wrong about that? Like, I literally, like, I should have maybe looked back at old episode recaps, but I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like it's been a while since we've sent a whole tribe. I know we send like someone in like individual and then they bring people with them, or when they like fake give
When they split into teams.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so one of those teams, but like I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we've sent a whole tribe like in their actual tribe divisions, not like the purple team to the sanctuary. Something about it felt weird. I was like,
Well,
maybe it's because
Because
it's
like,
so
what's
early.
the point? I hate the sanctuary so much. It's nothing. It's just it's nothing. And like you sent the team who won the other smaller version of the same thing just back to camp. So like there's a mini sanctuary. So you're either eating pastries at camp or eating pastries on some other beach. Like I don't
understand.
I don't see the appeal personally.
No.
So it's weird when they use it in ways that are like this, where it's like, okay, they haven't sent a full tribe reward to the sanctuary. So like, why are we doing it now? Why are we ever sending people to the sanctuary? I don't know, but we do.
Exactly. Like I was like, I don't know. IDK, man.
IDK.
IDK.
My Jill.
But we're starting to see some tensions bubble up between our friends, cross tribal lines even. So it's gonna be an interesting little go of it, especially knowing, spoiler alert, that the next episode we're getting the merge. But let's be honest, it's gonna be a fake merge for sure every time. You know? That's gonna be where I start to be like, respectfully, Survivor is not back. You know what I mean? All right, so let's talk about each tribe, sort of what they're feeling post this win or loss at the reward challenge. So Siva, oh, one thing I forgot is Chrissy kind of is like, Jeff, you're killing me. Like, I'm sad. Stop telling us that Siva lost, because that's not something they've heard up until this point. So she's a little bit bummed. We get back to camp. Like Stacey said, Mitch is kind of like, hey, girl, just put it away. Like, don't do this. Why are you doing this? He also kind of is like, she's just a lot. She has a lot of attitude. We see Chrissy getting mad at her for eating the fruit at camp because they had some left over from the previous challenge. And Chrissy's kind of like, you didn't even participate in the challenge. And then you came back and ate fruit. And we're talking all about like, I need a break. And so There's just like some tonal dissonance in that for Chrissy. And then basically Bianca is like still in this middle ground at Siva. So she's trying to hear everybody out. And Mitch and Chrissy come to her and they're like, we got to get out Say. And she's like, this kind of works in my favor. Like maybe I just go along with it. So how are we feeling about Siva post the reward challenge?
I mean, the taking of the unsanctioned fruit, it's Survivor tales all this time. Like, what's more classic than somebody coming back to camp and just helping themselves to some food and everyone else getting so pissed off? Like, oh, I do love to see it. I can't even lie.
I love
I
to
love
see.
to see it. And I feel like a player like Say, like, it's so easy to watch from the couch and be like, oh, she's not playing with tact. She doesn't have a filter and like whatever. Why is she doing that? Like, that's such dumb gameplay. But damn, if it doesn't make good television, like, you gotta have some people who are unafraid to not play Survivor. That was a double negative, but it's fine.
We got it. We're
I
with you.
suppose you understand. But you know what I mean? Like she's not putting a, what's it called? She's not like dampening her personality for the sake of the game. Should she be? As a viewer, you're like, Say, what are you doing? Don't speak your mind right now. Just shut up and sit down and you'll make it through the game. But like, girl, I love it. I love to watch it. And I
Hmm.
really like Say, so it's hard to watch and say, "Oh, I really wish you hadn't said that," but kind of still rooting for you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was just listening to the rest of Tyson's podcast and he had Carolyn on. And she was saying that she was like, I don't like when people, change their personality to just fit in. She was like, Emily Flippen kind of did that, and I hated it because I loved her at the start. And she was like, I didn't do that. So it is true. Yeah, I mean, it does make good TV, but I'm just like, Say, do you want to win though? Because Tyson was kind of like, I mean, if you want to win, you kind of have to put a bit. Like, it doesn't mean
Hmm.
you're gonna go home and like be, different. But for this game, you
Yeah.
might, if you want to win it, you might have to adjust. But Carolyn was like, no, absolutely not. So it's just an interesting like debate. But
Not to be
um,
rude, but Carolyn didn't win.
yeah, and Tyson was kind of like, I
Oh,
mean,
Dyson did. I just to put it out there.
well,
He
and
did
it'll be
get the
interesting
votes
to
for
see.
$1 million and she did not.
It'll be
She was a
interesting to
zero
see if
vote
we
pilot.
hear anything from Say's perspective about it. Like if she'll have a
yeah.
moment, maybe next episode, where she's like, I don't want to have to like quiet myself, but I know if I want to play with these people, I need to like rein it in a little bit. It'll just be
Mhm.
interesting to see if we get that introspection from her, like in a confessional. Because I feel like
Mhm.
that's what happened with Emily Flippen. I mean, I know Caleb talked to her. Was that his name? Caleb? Yeah.
Yeah.
That season, and he was like, listen, girl, you gotta we gotta switch some things up here.
Which have we gotten like any background about Say really? Like, do we know anything about her? No.
I don't think so. Well, we
I
got
don't
when she found her first idol, she had that like very emotional moment about like
Mhm.
all the women in her family and like her grandma, but there wasn't a lot of substance to that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we learned anything about the
Yeah.
background of that. I think we just heard her like connection to her family, but
Yeah,
Mhm.
she just said it without any sort of like giving us
Context.
then the context of like, well, why does that matter? How is that
right.
relevant to what
Okay.
you're doing here?
I would be very curious to just like I don't even remember like what her job is or whatever, but I'd be curious to hear a little more because I'm like, I
Hmm.
mean, because how does that work in real life depending on your job? Like, do you reel it in or do like I'm curious because I just again being the Enneagram 9, that's just not how I live, but it works for some people. So I'm just curious, no judgment. But those are my thoughts on Siva.
So Siva's having a little tension. We're feeling a little stressed, maybe. Also, just side note, I don't remember Cedric saying one single thing in that whole amount of time. So just showing that he's maybe a wild card, early on in the episode. I don't have a lot to say about Logie. They go on their little reward. They go to the sanctuary. There's way too much time spent with David talking about milk in a way that I was like, this is a lot. And then in another episode of This Is a Lot, Charity like cries. She's like giving a speech about like being an underdog and like being grateful and this whole thing. And I was like, once again, you're eating pastries at the sanctuary. Like, I just don't know if this is like you're meeting the moment in a weird way. But like, okay, go off, Queen. Except not Queen because of reasons that I've already discussed and have been cut out of this episode. But she is not for me. Any thoughts on Loggy, or if you remember anything else important that happened during this interaction? Because it meant nothing to me, quite honestly.
Okay, it actually meant a lot to me.
Great. Tell us.
David's tragic milk backstory, perfection. I love this man. He's in a silly, goofy mood, and I hope he makes it to the final three. I really do.
Silly, goofy, all the time.
And like, talk about just being like true to yourself. You know, like that's some weird shit. Why you gotta talk about why you love milk on television? But you do. And it's weird. There was at one point he was pouring the milk from the carafe into a glass, and his dirty fingernail was like
Oh,
scraping the milk, and I was like,
his
anyway.
dirty fingernails were gross, and it was quite
Some
close.
people watch this show to see, you know, the challenges, and I watch to make sure nobody's dirty fingernails get in the food, which they do all the time. Not to be a charity defender, because I'm really not. I don't feel any type of way about her. I think what we've seen
You
of
can
her so
be a charity
far,
defender within the context of this game. How about
within
that?
the context of this scene, honestly, because I think it's complicated and I don't need to like unpack the whole thing, but I do think her reaction was fine. Like, I don't love when people just cry randomly, but like, you finally have food. It's delicious. You can sit on like a nice little pillow at the sanctuary. Like, I get that that might be overwhelming. What I really didn't like was what we heard from Eva about it. I thought it was way too harsh. I would have edited it differently. I thought it was a weird precursor to then having like all of the Eva hero moments that we saw in the rest of the episode. Like, I just thought it was a weird thing to include. Maybe it will come up again later. I just didn't like the way it was put
What
together.
did she say? I don't remember. I should have maybe
She
rewatched,
had a
but
little confessional that was like, I don't get good vibes from Charity. Like, everything she does is so fake,
Oh, Eva, yeah.
such and such and
oh,
such. And I just didn't love the tone when like nothing really prompted it other than Charity just like being happy to be at the reward. And again, I don't feel any type of way about Charity. I really don't feel any type of way about Eva. I've talked about my perception of Eva, not my favorite on this season, which is fine. I just didn't love the way this scene was composed in the context of the larger episode. And I also don't love that this is now like the second or third time that we've heard from Eva in confessionals just like being mean about a woman. Like, I just don't love that. And I don't know why we're doing it, Survivor editors.
it does feel like if I had a note on this episode, it would be some tonal stuff.
Yeah.
I think because of all the like sort of heartfelt moments we have, there's a lot of weird cuts to things and a lot of weird
Yeah.
like tonal issues that I had where I just had to sort of be like, I'm gonna choose to ignore that. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna choose to like edit
Yeah.
this in my own way because the tone is weird. There was
Yeah.
tonal dissonance for certain in this episode. And so I agree with you. I think of actually like the whole thing that I thought was weird is like Eva actually strikes me as someone who would not like sore losers either. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Sure.
so it felt weird to me that she was so anti-charity having this reaction because it's like, girl, I think you kind of are on the same side here. Like, I actually think you guys might agree about these
Hmm.
feelings. But either way, yeah, it just felt like for you to then make so much of this episode about Eva and her struggles and whatever, for you to show this weird scene of her being like, I don't like her and she seems fake, that's like a weird tonal,
It just, yeah, it was a
weird
weird
tonal choice.
inclusion. I would not have done it that way.
Stacey, any other thoughts on Loggy before we go to Vula?
No.
All right, so let's go to everybody's favorite tribe, New Vula. Basically, actually, maybe not. I shouldn't speak on behalf of Stacey because she told us earlier that like this conversation did not land with her the way it did with me and Anna.
No, no.
No,
Don't
she was
say
in,
that.
Stacey was not as obsessed with
As
Vula the way that
obsessed,
we
sorry,
were.
not that it didn't land with her. It was
Oh,
that
that's what you're oh yeah. No,
you
that's
weren't
true.
as obsessed with them as me and Anna are, whereas like me and Anna might like fight to the death on
In the
behalf.
text, we were like, if anything happens to Vula, I'll die.
I'll die. I will pull a Hunger Games and murder everyone. Do you know what I mean? So I would protect them with my whole life. So we have Camilla, Shaheen, Joe, and Kyle basically just having this like very honest and open conversation. And I'm not exactly sure what prompted it, but I think it came off the high of like finally winning together. And they basically were like, what if we were a four? Like, what if the four of us worked together rather than trying to only go back to tribal lines when we merge? And it comes out of this idea that basically Camilla, Shaheen, Joe, and Kyle have this like very heartfelt conversation about their parents' struggles and how their lives are different than ours and what they have gone through that has allowed these people to be where they're at now. So I didn't write down a ton of information, but basically Shaheen talks about how his father was like, they're Iranian, right? And his father, I'm gonna mess this up. I should have rewatched this part. But basically he was talking about how his father was like captured in Iran. And then Camilla was talking about how her family is from Sri Lanka and sort of the things they went through as immigrants. And Joe talks about how his parents are actually like his mom is white and his dad is black, and how they like were together during segregation, I believe is what he was saying. And so there was just a lot of like sharing of like real human like things that affect their daily life and how they interact with the world, and sharing how that has affected them, but also like appreciating what their parents went through for them to be able to live and be in the world as they are now. And so, and they basically all realized like, if we have this much in common and this much of a like shared history, for lack of better words, why are we fighting against each other? Like, what if we just worked together and use this connection that we have to help further ourselves in this game, which is, I think, Survivor at its best. Is that's a great example of Survivor at its best. So, any thoughts on Vula?
I'll make mine quick because I feel like I've talked a lot. I just think for the new era and what we've tried to see them do with like diverse storylines and really incorporating people's outside of the game life and their, we joke all the time like their tragic backstory, but like they bring their out of game struggles into the game and try to like contextualize it. I think this is one of the best examples we've seen in New Era of like from an editing perspective and just from like a natural organic communication perspective of like zooming out and really seeing that it is just a game. And we've seen that conversation in a lot of different ways of people being like, oh, Survivor's really hard, but this thing that I did in my life was harder, so I can do this and like it'll help me in the game. And this just felt like the most natural and impactful version of that conversation. And it's hard to strike the right balance. And obviously, it depends on what people are talking about. But I just think sometimes New Era has been quite heavy handed with trying to like shoehorn that in and make it a discussion of like, Survivor's hard, but life is harder, so we can do this. And this just, I don't know, it felt so organic. And like the four of them were really, really connecting. And I just love them. And I thought it was a really great moment. And I'm glad that it's getting its recognition, especially in the context of this whole episode. But I wish they would have lingered on it even more, honestly.
Yeah, this was cool just because I was like, what are the odds they all have something they can relate to with this? Like, we knew Camilla and Kyle, at least have similar like backgrounds, but because they had already bonded. But I really like, I was like, what's Joe about to say? And then he was like, oh, my dad's black. And I was like, oh, Joe, welcome to the cookout. I didn't realize you could contribute here. So that was funny. But it was cool though. I don't have a lot more to add. Just it was cool to see them kind of just talk about deeper stuff. I assume since you're just out there with nothing to do for hours, that sometimes like deep stuff like that just comes up naturally. But it was just cool how they all kind of like, I would assume even out like now that the game's over, they still like have a lot of respect for each other, no matter what, who won or what happened in the future. So it was cool. It was a good moment.
Yeah. I just thought it was like a nice, just an example of what Survivor at its best is like human connections in service of and also outside of a game, which I think is just why we watch and why it is still on 24 years later. All right, let's get to this immunity challenge. A lot is going to happen here. I'm going to give like an overview of all of it. I know, Stacey, you had a comment that you wanted to make about the challenge. So I'm remembering and naming that I will come back and ask you about it. So here we are. We've seen all these interactions on the tribes. Now it is time to put that to the test. Let's go to the immunity challenge. We see this cute little interaction with Mitch being like, we'll see you in a little bit. Ari, the immunity idol. Spoiler alert, they do not see it in a little bit. So that was fun. But basically the challenge is you got to jump in the ocean, like strapped to a boat basically, and then you like swim/pull the boat with this very heavy chest in it to the shore. Then you pick up the chest, bring it to a spot. They have to unbraid these ropes to get a key. You unlock the chest, you get these little balls. You have to you have to like dig under a thing. Classic Survivor, push your team under a pole basically, but it's on the ground, so you got to dig underneath it. And then once you get through that, all four people get through that, then you have to land, like every single person has to land a ball in this table maze. So it was like everyone has to do it. It's not just one person can do all four of them. In a shocking turn of events, Vula not only wins immunity, comes in first, and all of us are like, hell yeah, babe. And we see Logie and Siva sort of trying to finish this table maze last, which is what gets us into the other part of this that is the most sort of like emotional piece of this. Everybody on Logie is done, and it's just Eva. And Eva is very worked up. Like you can tell she's really frustrated with herself. She cannot get this to happen. She's like, why can't I get this? Why can't I get this? And you sort of get the sense as a viewer that it is more than just frustration. It potentially is connected to her autism. Like it seems like she is in a very particular place and can't sort of get herself out of that. And you see Joe and Shaheen, even as former Logie on the Vulu mat, like really sort of being like, oh, girl, you got to get it together. Logie very kindly, like new Logie is very encouraging to her. They finally get it. Joe is like distraught. Like you can tell Joe is like, I want to help her, but like I am not on her team. But you can see him very much being like stressed and worried about her in a way that a dad would worry about their child. This is for anyone who watches Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I texted this to Stacey and Anna and neither one of them knew what I was talking about. So I'm just going to say it here. But there's a scene in Brooklyn Nine-Nine where Charles is watching Amy and Jake interact and they like don't like they're clearly upset and Charles is like, Jake, go to her. And that's how I felt looking at Joe. I was like, Joe, go to her, help her. And Jeff recognizes that something's going on. So Jeff says to Joe, he's like, do you want to like help her? And Joe's like, yeah, can I? And so he goes over to the other mat, basically helps her calm down, does what she told him to do to sort of help her get out of it. It's very sweet. It was heartbreaking to watch, honestly. And then basically Jeff's like, okay, like we got to talk about it as he is wont to do. And Jeff asks like what sort of happened. And Joe's like, it's bigger than the game. Like I would want someone to do that for my daughter. So that's what I did. And then Jeff cries, which we all saw in the preview because it's getting very emotional. So I know that's a lot. Maybe we start with Stacey's comment about the challenge to, again, in terms of tonal dissonance, let's talk about the challenge first and then we can talk about Joe and Eva because we're just switching tones throughout this episode. But Stacey, what was your comment about the challenge?
Yeah, this is not, I mean, it does relate because it's like so Eva had to do that maze because everyone had to get one of the balls into the like bottom of the maze. And I don't like, maybe I'm not remembering, but I don't think they do it like that often. Like usually
I felt the same way. It felt not like a new twist.
Yeah.
But it arbitrarily was the twist today.
Yeah, like
We've
I think
definitely done it a couple times before.
Yes, it's definitely happened.
It's never like a trackable pattern of when we do it.
Okay.
But every once in a while, Jeff will be like, each person has to either like make a basket or toss a ring or like
Yeah,
toss a
that's
sandbag.
true. Yeah. But so what do y'all think about that? Because I don't love that. Like I kind of like when two people are assigned to something and maybe you can't like switch out, but I don't really like when everyone has to do something like that. That to me was pretty hard. I mean, most people were doing it wildly well. I was like, I'm confused. How is the ball never like also falling off the ball? Like they're never knocking out another ball? I don't know. It was weird to me how well they did it. But what did y'all think? What do y'all think of just everyone having to do a part of it?
I like it. I like that it's not all the time, like we just said, but I mean, I think at a certain point in Survivor, like you have to start forcing people's hand. And like if you're shit at challenges and a detriment to your team, like if we're still in the tribal game, like that's something that matters. And so I don't mind. And in fact, I actually like when occasionally the game forces you to participate. Because nothing's worse than someone who like is just actively bad at stuff, getting through the game and not ever having to be tested on it, you know? That's why I have such a problem with fire. Like, why do we wait until the end of the game to see if they can make a fire? Like, these are things that when you come to be on Survivor, like you kind of have to try a little bit, in my opinion. That's just my
That's
opinion.
true.
I feel similarly, but for a different reason, Anna. I actually think it's just good. One of the things that we have seen, I mean, the tribes being uneven to start is like a different issue, but I do think it levels the playing field of like that particular thing is not something that like necessarily strength is going to be the reason you're successful, right?
Hmm.
But I also think Vula was a really good example of how to adjust when someone is struggling. So, like, Camilla couldn't do it. Like, she was really struggling. So, Shaheen was like, come out, let's let the
Hmm.
other people do it. And so, like, Joe and Kyle did it, and Shaheen, I think, had already done it. And Shaheen was like, watch what they're doing and was like coaching Camilla through it. And I thought that was like a really good example of how teamwork in that moment actually what is very helpful, but
Yeah.
not in a way that like you have to rely on one person to be able to do it. Like every single person was able to do it, but Shaheen like helped Camilla figure out how to do it so that when it was her turn again, she
Mhm.
actually could do it. So I was like, that I think that's what I want to see out of a challenge is like your team doesn't have to be the best team that's going to perfectly do it, but to see you guys work together and figure out how to navigate that and help each
Mhm.
other finish the challenge, I thought was nice. And I did like that everybody was required to participate. Now,
Yeah.
do I think there is, Stacey? I think your point is also valid. Like Eva, for example, I'm glad we saw her triumph, but as someone who has an autistic family member,
Hmm.
sometimes that can spiral like out of control if they can't sort of figure out a way to overcome, if you will, because they are like very debilitating sort of, I don't like the word meltdown, but like the idea of
Hmm.
like you're so focused on you failing that you like can't get through that. And so in that way, I was like, there could also be the argument that like you put them in a situation where they could not be successful.
Hmm.
There just wasn't the opportunity for her to then find success in that moment. So I could go either way on it, but I do like that it evens the playing field a little bit and forces you to work together to figure out how to get overcome that challenge rather than being like, well, let's just have Mitch shoot them all.
It true because
You
he's
know what I mean?
amazing at that.
Which by the way, I'm sorry, he's Steph Curry. He literally like hits every target. Did he play basketball or is this just like like a hidden talent that he found on the island? Like I do need to know.
I'm so ready for him to just body every individual challenge.
I
Like
know. I'm ready for
Like,
that.
yes.
I
it
don't
needs
know
to be
what
good.
it is, but this week I think he like tweeted at the Purple Pants podcast because they must have given him a shout out. And he was like, "Finally, y'all put some respect on my name." And they were like, "Oh, our bad. Like you're great. We didn't realize till this week that you're like killing every immunity challenge." So, but yeah, I don't know. I agree with both of your thoughts. I did feel bad that I'm like she has to do it, and I liked how they did take people out and like just get other people to do it quickly and then bring them back in. Like at least it wasn't like you have to do it on your turn, like you can't swap out. But I was just like, ugh, I don't know if I could do that one. So then it's like it can really set you up to be the person voted to go home. Like if you
Yeah.
lose and then you go tribal, you're probably going home.
Yeah. So it's a tough spot to be in. Do we have thoughts on the Joe Eva interaction post challenge? Jeff crying, like any thoughts there? Tonal shift, we just gotta like you gotta go through it.
Yeah. Like I said, the first time I watched this, I wasn't in the best mood. And I was texting Anna, and I feel like I don't know. I just feel like it wasn't hitting. And I cry most episodes, but it wasn't like hitting me the way, I feel like it was hitting 99% of people. So I feel like I don't really want to share a ton of thoughts because I want to be respectful. And I just feel like maybe I need to reflect a little more. I will say the second time I watched it, it definitely hit me harder.
No, I feel very similar, Stacey. Like I can acknowledge the impact of this moment and that it was extremely powerful, especially on a show like Survivor that does
Yeah.
have a history of like not being so great to
Yeah.
anyone other than like straight white guys. So it is a very positive thing for the show overall, for people watching it, for parents, for young kids, anyone who may have been moved or inspired by this moment. I agree, Stacey. I know we were texting, like I also was really not in a good mood when I was watching it, so I think I was watching through sort of jaded eyes. So I also won't really comment beyond that, but I can recognize that this was a very powerful moment in Survivor canon. I think if I had to put some of my commentary in, my biggest takeaway is like, again, Jeff Probst with the hyperbole of like everything is so extreme in the way he talks about it. And I mostly mean that from the perspective of like after the fact, like they aired this on CBS twice, like they played it on like Saturday night or something, just like the language around talking about it can skew exploitative,
Yeah.
just in my opinion. And I don't like when that starts to sort of eclipse the actual power behind it. And I think that sort of skews my view a little bit, but I mean, it was beautiful. You can't deny that.
Maybe I'm coming at this. One, I didn't watch live, unfortunately. I did go see the picture of Dorian Gray with Sarah Snook, and it was incredible. So
Mm.
it was a valid reason to miss Survivor this week. I'm trying to think about how to say this without like being too like emotional on main, if you will. I, as someone who has a brother who's autistic and has similar episodes, I was like, I don't know, I was very moved by it, to be quite honest. I'm not gonna cry. But I think part of it was just like seeing her really own it was so lovely. And like I think it's hard. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. It's hard when
Crying on the
I
pod.
know. It's hard when you see someone who has autism like have one of those moments. I'm so emotional. I'm also like hungover, so like this is just like a moment. I have been the Joe in that situation. And so to see someone like so deeply care about someone who like wants to just make them feel safe and comforted and like not and like to have to watch that person like struggle for, I don't know, because it's edited, so I don't know how long they were watching her feel that sort of like pressure and frustration to then him be like, it's more than the game. Like, I just wanted to help her. I was like very touched. And then I was immediately not touched when Jeff cried. Not to make it like boo Jeff. Like it wasn't a vibe check moment. It was just one of those things where I was like, it feels a little bit like exploitative, I think is probably the right word. And it felt like I'm certain that Jeff's emotion came from a real place, but
Mm.
it was also like, why are you involved? Like, why? Like, I don't know. Something about it felt a little bit weird,
Mm.
but I don't know. I just like, I was very emotional watching it, but I think it comes more from like a personal relationship to that actual thing that happened more so than the way it was potentially portrayed on the episode, if that makes sense. And so I think this is also why I'm going to just transition us into like what we see from Logie right after this, because I also think, knowing my own personal experience, that Star giving the idol to Eva, which is basically the last thing we see before we go, where we have a real tonal shift and have to go back to Siva, who now has to go to tribal, which is just, speaking of tonal
Whiplash.
dissonance, I was like, what
Whiplash.
is happening?
Yeah.
This episode is crazy. At Logie, we go back and they're all like, thank you so much for sharing. Like, and Star has this really beautiful confessional where she's like, so much about Eva makes sense now. And she's like, I have family members, I know people who have autism, like, so much about that, like how Eva is with me, how Eva is within our tribe, like so much about her now makes sense and I can have more empathy for her basically. And I think that is ultimately what, maybe I'm assuming too much of her, but I think ultimately that's what causes her to make this choice of like, Eva does do the work of like getting the idol, which is
Oh yeah.
interesting comparison between Kyle and Camilla. But like ultimately, Eva does the work to figure out the word. But I also think, as some, like, I would be hard pressed to not feel like the same sort of impulse as Star of like, I now empathize with her, like I want to help her and she did the work, so here's my idol. But I know that I have a very, according to the internet, hot take on that. Everyone on the internet is like, Star, what the fuck are you doing? So I am very open to having that conversation. Do I think it was a good gameplay move? No. Do I think it was an overreaction? Potentially. But I can understand where, like, you guys just saw how emotional I was about that. Like, I would potentially feel the exact, like, I would maybe make the wrong call in that moment. So I would love to hear your guys' take on what happened at Logie post tribal. Or I keep saying post tribal. I mean post tribal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, first, thanks for sharing that, Aggie, because that was part of it too. Like, I know you have a personal connection, and I don't have as much exposure to that, so I also just feel like my opinion doesn't matter that much. So, and it was like the Joe and Eva part of it, like that. I mean, we've kind of had the build up to that from when she first shared it with him. So like that part was very, meaningful to see. But yeah, maybe it was part of like the Jeff thing. It was like the hype of like the first time ever he's gonna cry. Anyway, so then what'd you just ask about?
Oh, thoughts on Star giving Eva the idol, etc.
Oh yeah. So
Which
I did
heard you. It's a bad call.
Well, no, I mean I texted Anna and I was like, what? Like, okay, this is too much. But then I was like, I mean, it's not the worst thing because everyone knows about that idol. So I mean, she did get it out of her possession. And that's what Tyson kind of said on his podcast. So I mean, I don't know if that was her. I don't think that was her reason, but it's not the worst thing. So
Yeah, I know. We were texting about that, Stacey, of like, I don't know if that's what she meant to do with it. It certainly didn't seem that way from what we saw, but in hindsight, yeah, okay. Now Star doesn't have an idol burning a hole in her pocket that everybody knows about. So could be a good thing for her. That's all.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, I understand Star in this moment, this like emotional reaction, but like, girl, it is technically yours. Like you can give it away. You can. But I also was just like, but what if she uses it to get rid of you? Like,
oh no.
I don't think that would be the case. It seems like maybe Star and Eva have the potential to like be simpatico. Why am I okay? But like see the ability to have each other's back potentially more than before. But who's to say?
Wait, can I ask? Yeah. So the word for them was silent? Was that the word?
Yes.
Was it listen for the other team or has it been silent?
It was silent.
It was listen, silent, and list.
Okay. All right.
So everybody did have a different word. I actually think original Siva, which was Kyle's idol, enlist was the hardest one of those to get. Silent and listen, I feel like those are very common words. Enlist is not one I would have gone to be like,
well, I think you're also just more likely to start with a consonant than a vowel in your guessing game,
Yeah.
As a Wordle player.
Spoken like a Wordle girly.
Oh my god.
Spoken like a Wordle girly.
You get it.
All right. So, in an effort to just really mirror this episode, let's have a tonal shift to Siva. Okay? Let's just acknowledge it and move on. We get back to Siva, who is sad that they have lost for the first time. Bianca has no vote, and we see her at the beginning of this. It's a pretty short amount of time because of all the other things we've had going on this episode. We see Bianca being like, I have no vote. My plan is to play both sides and get them to force a tie. Like my plan is to just sort of say I'm on both people's sides, figure out who they're voting for, and let it be a 2-2 tie. They'll vote again, and I'll just sort of like, I will come out of this safe. Not a bad plan. Not a bad plan. And then because of, I feel like the length of time she has before tribal council, she's like, and I think also having watched Thomas go home the episode before and being like, fuck, my number one ally isn't here. I can only rely on myself. We see her debating a lot. Should I tell someone I don't have a vote? Should I not? Who's to say? She finally decides, hey, if I tell Cedric that I don't have a vote, maybe he'll just put his vote on Say and it'll just be 3-1. And I won't even have to worry about the tie potentially not going the way I planned, whatever. They are dressed for tribal council at this point. Cedric has his jacket on. They are getting ready to do their little walk. Like it is clearly very close to time.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Not only are they ready, we get the traditional, like, more slow-mo camera footage of them, like, packing up and getting their torches. And then we cut to another scene. Like,
it was honestly, this part of the episode was really fun to watch as a viewer, like from an editing standpoint, and the whole thing, like the last 10 minutes were good gameplay minutes after all of this emotional sort of interactions that we'd seen. She I will say reluctantly, tells Cedric with 5 minutes left, like, I don't have a vote. And you're kind of like, and she's like, don't screw me on this. Famous last words. So then cut to tribal council. Jeff basically reads Cedric and Say and is like, you've spent more time with me here at tribal than at camp. And I was like, okay, tell them, Jeff. And then there's just a little bit of like, again, the no talking about something small could make you change your feelings or question something. Cedric says that. Say says she wants to break up a dynamic duo, which like I think she's talking about Chrissy and Mitch, but who's to say? See what I did there? And then And then this is where the Survivor editors really had a little fun. We see Mitch vote for Say. We say vote for Chrissy. And then no more votes. And then plot twist, Jeff reads out the votes. It's 1 for Say, 1 for Chrissy, 2 for Bianca. And we're all like, excuse you. And Bianca sobbing, going to get her torch. Everybody else is just having a conversation about what just went down in the votes. It is wild. I was like, y'all, she is crying. Can't you save this for Cam? And Chrissy's, I'm just gonna name it here. Chrissy pissed me the hell off in this moment.
Oh.
Which we can get into, but Chrissy was basically like, didn't you notice there's only 4 votes? And then she was like, okay, there were only 4 votes. And so like they basically go through and says like, I did not know that. And Mitch is shocked and Cedric's like, and I'm like, Cedric, don't act like this. And Bianca goes home like sobbing, and the 4 of them are having their own personal conversation. It's a very upsetting end for Bianca, but I will save my Chrissy thoughts until you guys share how you are feeling about this. But how do we feel about this plot twist, this whole interaction, Bianca's choice to share that she doesn't have a vote? What do we think?
I feel bad. I feel bad about the way that this all went down. It like was kind of fun to watch, but this is where like the overall pacing of the episode in favor of other things to highlight, which totally worth it, but it kind of comes to bite us in the ass in these last like 7 minutes where we really don't see their deliberation. We just see Bianca panicking and questioning what she should do. She's the only person we hear from, and most of it is in confessional. And it's just like it was a weird way to prep for how the vote was going to go for the audience. And I feel as though they had no other options given the way that they edited the rest of the episode and left no time for this. It just I really didn't like it. It felt kind of like a disappointing end to an otherwise really good episode. It didn't feel fair to Siva, to Bianca. I do think the vote itself made sense because I can put context clues together, but not because of what we're shown. Like, we really don't hear Cedric's perspective. We don't hear Chrissy's perspective. All we got was like an episode ago, an offhanded mention from Chrissy about how Bianca either has an advantage or doesn't have a vote because she went on a journey. So like, it was such a blink and you miss it line from Chrissy, not even in this episode, that informs why she voted the way that she did. And I just think we could have done better as a production team because I don't know, it felt kind of unfair to how the episode ended that we saw only these things. But I think it made sense. I just didn't like it.
Yeah, it was just kind of a weird ending, I guess. And like Bianca was very devastated. I felt so bad. She was so devastated. And yeah, I agree with what you said, Aggie. Like Chrissy just being like, did you notice there were 4 votes? Like, well, Bianca has not even snuffed the torch yet. Like, just what you're about to go back to camp. It was just a weird, yeah. And I guess I'm still kind of confused because I'm like, okay, Mitch voted for Say, and then who was the other? Or no, that's the only one who voted
Mitch
for
voted for Say voted for Chrissy. So clearly
Yeah.
Cedric went and talked to
Chrissy?
Chrissy of all
Yeah.
people and said, hey girl, Bianca has no vote. Let's just vote her out.
Yeah.
And like lock it down. We'll tell Say and Mitch later. But like,
why
you
didn't
and
he
I just gotta vote Bianca. Because he's insane. I'm so sorry. That's
I don't even know if that's what happened. In my version of events, Chrissy thought that they had a 3 voting for Say, so she said, I'm going to throw a vote on Bianca because I know Bianca doesn't have a vote, so the numbers aren't numbering. I don't think Cedric told Chrissy that Bianca
Well,
I
my
can't wait
evidence
to-
for that is that Chrissy, the way she said, did you notice there's only 4 votes, was knowingly. It was not,
But I think that
now
that's
I'm
because
realizing there's
she
only 4.
voted for Bianca because she had an inkling that she had no vote. And she wanted everyone to know, like, this is, I already knew this.
That's, yeah, it was hard.
I didn't like her
tell.
attitude. I hated it so deeply. It gave me the worst taste of Chrissy. Like, I was like, I actually hate that.
She she clearly wanted Say to feel like dumb, kind of like just to be
Right, like left in the dark.
She wanted Say to feel dumb. She wanted to feel superior.
Mhm.
And I thought, I was like, I know you and Mitch aren't necessarily the closest, but I can't imagine Mitch now wants to continue working with you. Like, that's a bad look for you with your own Siva tribe members. I got the ick so bad. I was like, You're being rude.
Yeah, I
No,
didn't
And
love
like,
the attitude.
and it
It's
just
attitude
so
was
hard
no.
though, because like in a show where we always talk about the fact that like we don't see everything, like we saw nothing. We
Nothing.
yeah,
saw nothing.
that's true.
Which I went back and forth on this, but I was kind of like, I do think there's something interesting in that being the way they show it, because it was like shocking for the viewer, right?
Hmm.
But I do need you to give us that information at the beginning of next week. Like, I understand you
Yeah.
chose to keep it, but if you don't explain it at the beginning of next week, I'll be very upset. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt
For
that you're
sure.
going to explain it to me. I'm giving you that moment.
If they don't, that's wild. That's so
I
wild.
don't know that I trust that they will.
Oh, oh, there's definitely a huge possibility, Anna, that they will not. But I'm gonna
Gosh.
give them 7 days to prove me right, and then
Mhm.
I'll be mad
Oh
then, you know?
my
Yeah.
gosh. Also, I just have to say, like, Cedric, you are making enemies left and right.
Cedric is out here playing a different game than everybody else. He doesn't want to be there anymore, and that's fine.
Well,
But like,
he's thinking what Say was saying, like, just give me a break. I
I
just want a
deserve a
little
little
break.
break. I deserve a little break.
And like, if anybody does, it's Cedric.
Cedric. He's voted for 7 different people. Across his
Insane
5
run.
episodes of the show, he's voted for 7 different people.
I just think he can't win because, like, he has so many enemies, although they're not on the jury yet. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
nobody's on the jury yet.
You're not on
yeah,
the jury. It
that's
doesn't
true.
matter.
I bet he's the first jury member.
Oh,
I would
God.
make that
Cool.
bet.
Okay, heard you. But let's vibe check our boy. Anna, you're up first.
Ooh, okay. Mine may be controversial. It's in the grand theme this week of tonal dissonance, and it comes right in the middle of post-challenge when they're debriefing after
Mhm.
Ava has, come back to herself. And Jeff is sort of recapping the moment for us.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he sort of snaps his head and he's like, that doesn't mean that Eva and Joe aren't gonna betray each other. And I was
Yep.
like, my guy, give it a beat.
Give it a
Give it a
minute.
beat. Maybe don't come so intensely on the they might betray each other. Like I get your point and you're not wrong. And it was I
You're
suppose a
producing a
moment of
television.
levity, but I
Yeah.
think the delivery could have been a bit softer.
Yeah. I just think, Jeffrey was he was producing a television show in that moment. I wrote that down as well, and I was like, I don't know if that's it, but like, do you, Jeffrey?
He was just so gung-ho about it.
Okay. Stacey, what's yours? And I'll say mine. I have a different one.
Mine, yes, I was gonna forget because I think there are many of him this week, but the one I wrote down was in the immunity challenge when Jeff says something like, Say is feeling the pressure. And she's like, No, I'm not, Jeff. And then Jeff's like, Well, you should be. And I'm like, Are you arguing with
Stacey,
people in a
he
challenge?
yells, you should. He goes, you should. And I was like, it's enough,
Why
sir.
are we arguing with people in the middle of a challenge? Leave her
I mean,
alone.
speaking of, he also goes, that was an abysmal failure, talking about Cedric trying to throw the
That
ball
was an
in the net.
abysmal
And
failure.
Cedric just goes, thanks, Jeff. My personal favorite, though, is like we have not discussed this, but Jeff makes way too many sexual innuendos for an episode that
Oh, it's
ends
gross.
for a challenge that ends on the note of like Eva crying over sharing that she's autistic with the whole group. And they all made the edit. My favorite was hips are stuck, need a little more hole in there. A little more hole in there. Jeff.
And the
You know
one
those
about
GIFs on Twitter where it's like Pedro Pascal knows what he's doing? That's how I feel about Jeff in that moment. But like not in a hot way, in a like Jeff,
Oh,
you knew what
in
you
like
were
a
doing.
distressing way.
Like in a distressing way.
Was this also the episode where he was talking about balls dropping?
dropping, yes. And he
Yeah.
said on his podcast that he just can't pass up a balls joke, apparently. And I was like, What? You're like 60 something.
Also, like,
Yeah.
you can't say you love jokes about balls in the same episode that you're like, this is so important to families. Like, this moment is families are going to be inspired. The children and the parents that watch together
Yeah.
be moved. And also balls.
And also balls.
Time
And
place, Jeff.
also balls. We vibe checked our boy. We've recapped the episode. We do need to do a castaway of the week before we do rapid fire. Oh shit, I put myself first. That was a terrible idea. For everything that happened, I actually don't know who I should pick.
I
That's
know.
crazy.
Because like Normally I pick Castaway of the Week based on like the vote, but quite literally everyone Ari the vote pissed me off. So I'm gonna go with Joe
Mm-hmm.
for bringing our girl Eva down, being like a real dad in this moment. I guess I could pick Camilla, but I picked her last week and 2 weeks ago. So I just like I have to pick someone else. But Camilla really came through for Vula in that final challenge. But I'm gonna go with Joe for like doing the dad thing, helping Eva. It might hurt his game long term, so this could be not a good move on his part. But I think for me personally, I just need to shout out Joe in this moment. But I understand that like I can't pick someone from Siva. I'm so sorry. No part of that vote out and the end of that episode is something I want to reward with Castaway of the Week. Stacey, who's your Castaway of the Week?
Oh, gosh. Okay. I mean, despite everything I was saying before, I think I am going to give it to Eva because when you think about, again, I think it's hard to have to do a part of a challenge just for anyone. And then she was feeling a lot of pressure. She was definitely, struggling with it. And she did it. At the end of the day, she did it. I mean, all the like adrenaline and emotions kind of came after, but she like, even through tears, was able to like complete it. So I still think that was impressive. She ended up getting an idol. Now, is it a target? Like, probably, but I mean, she had a great episode. So yeah, so I'll go with Eva.
Everything's coming up Eva, you know what I mean? Anna.
I gotta give it to Joe as well. I think I don't want his role in everything that we saw happen to go understated, which I don't think it has, but he's not, he's not the main focus of the conversations, and he absolutely should be. And then on top of, his relationship with Eva, we had the other conversation at Vula, talking about his parents, and I just feel like we really have been opened up even more to the wonderful man that Joe seems to be. And he could go far. I do think based on what we've learned about him, he's not gonna be able to make like an audacious move in the game. I think he's gonna stick to his loyalty and his connections, which may take him far. I don't think it will take him all the
As long as
way.
it takes New Vula far, I'm cool with that. Do you know what I mean?
Cool with that, and like I feel like he's winning in life, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, he is winning in life. What a perfect angel. I adore him. Okay, let's do some rapid fire. They should be quick. First, been a whole lot of talk as we've sort of breadcrumbed throughout the first few episodes of like dynamic duos. Say brings it up at the end here. She's talking about Chrissy and Mitch, who is not a dynamic duo that I would have put on this list. But regardless, what duo are you rooting for? I put down Kyle, Camilla, Joe, Eva, Charity, Mitch. I think there's a few others potentially. But like, is there a duo you are most rooting for as we go into the merge? Who do you want to see find success in this fake merge? I can feel it in my bones coming together of the three tribes. Who are we rooting for?
I would say Kyle and Camilla, like they're my favorite duo, I think, just after what
Yeah.
they did 2 weeks ago. So I would like them to make it to the merge, and hopefully I want them in the final tribal. Although, does that help my draft?
No, but it helps mine.
Oh man.
Yeah, I have to say Kyle and Camilla as well. They're the only pair duo, as it were, that has matched their like genuine connection with strategy and gameplay and like applying their alliance to the way that they're playing the game. So I have to pick them.
I think I have to pick Kyle and Camilla as well, just because I think their strategic gameplay has been so fun to watch. But like here's the problem. I don't like Charity, but I do love Mitch.
I love Mitch.
So
Oh yeah,
am I rooting for their duo so that Mitch can make it further? Maybe.
I need a new duo of like Mitch and Mary. You know what I mean?
Yes, like Mitch, go find another girl, which actually leads me into the next question. So who do you think is going to be the one person who doesn't officially make the merge next week? Because I'm making an assumption that that's what's going to happen, but I low key think it could be Charity.
Yeah.
It definitely could. Will you scroll up to who's left? So you can
Yes,
see
of
everybody.
course. I low key think Charity could be one of the people on the block there.
It's so tough because it depends, like if they do fake merge and they split them into new teams.
Yeah, if they
like,
split them into new teams, I don't know, but like for
Yeah.
me, the reason Charity is kind of popping out to me is like we've seen breadcrumbed things about her, like her thinking David's a pawn, her having this relationship with Mitch. Siva is going to be the team with the most people left. I low key think if they can swing it, the group will target Siva because they have 6 and the other tribes have 4 and 3 left. So I think at the fake merge, they will try to get out of Siva if they can swing it. And I think Kyle and Camilla have some new Vula things working with them. I think David is too goofy to like really be a
I
threat
don't
in
know.
that
I think a
way.
case could be made for David.
I do think it's going to be a Siva, and I think Chrissy hasn't. I don't see her being someone. I think her and Cedric might actually end up, if they work together. I think he might be able to sort of be like, oh, me and Say can sort of work with you. I think David is also a good option. I just low key feel like it's going to be a woman. I just something about it feels like it's.
I also think like there is such a case to be made, and I hate to watch the show this way, but they do it all the time. They're too transparent, where like it can either go, who have we heard the most from in the early
Yeah.
game, or who have we heard the least from?
And if
You
it's
know?
the most, it's Say.
If it's the most, it's Say. If it's the least, it's Chrissy
Yeah, or Charity.
or Charity.
So
I
I don't
also
know.
think it could be like Star, honestly. I could see Star kind
Oh,
of.
imagine her giving away her idol and then immediately goes
Yeah.
home. Like tough,
There's
tough.
one thing at the Bryson Wen party or whatever, they were talking about Star and they were like, have you noticed she's not like when the whole tribe is together, this was before they switched tribes, but when the whole tribe is together, like she's nowhere to be seen like all the time. So I don't know. I can't really get a good read on like her place in the game still, even though she's
No, me neither.
bonded. Yeah.
Me neither. So excited to see what we do next week at this drop your buff stage of the game. Remember, it does not say you are merged. It says drop your buffs.
Give us a real merge, you
Give us
coward.
a real merge. Give us a merge feast, Jeffrey. Don't do this to me. But we'll see what happens. Excited to see how this moves. Thank you for dealing with my emotions on air. And we'll see you next week for episode 6. Bye-bye.
Bye.